Hi, this is Mark Sokolow. Today we're going to talk about business ethics. I've been an attorney for over 30 years and I've taught business law at San Jacinto College, and before that I taught political science at the University of Lamar State College, and I've worked for cities for over 20 years and also worked with their economic development corporations, and we assisted businesses in business development. Business ethics. It's one of those subjects that is just a lot of debate about. You have the minimum that you have to do, which is, of course, what is required by state law, federal law, ordinances. And then you have more of the philosophy behind it all. I mean, you have the religious aspect. In this case, I mean, you're depending on your own religion, whether you're Jewish and you go by the Holy Bible, the New Testament, whether you're Muslim and you go by the Quran, and all these books, of course, have their views, their precepts as to how businesses should perform. You have, just you have how leaders and philosophers. You had the social contract of Rousseau, and here's a really good book from Penguin Classics by Jean-Jacques Rousseau on the social contract. You have what a lot of people don't realize is that King James actually was a prolific writer, and he really talked about the moral duties and the ethical duties of kings and their views of how they really, even though in his view they were appointed by God to be monarchs, his view is that they had to be good and treat their citizens right and things of that sort. So what we have today is going to be a brief discussion about business ethics, and I hope you enjoy the video. Thank you. Hi, this is Mark Sokolow. Today we're going to talk about business ethics. There's a moral minimum that we expect, which is that businesses need to comply with the laws that are adopted by the legislature, whether it's the Texas legislature, whether it's the Congress, or whether it's just local cities and their ordinances. In Texas, we've adopted the Penal Code, which prohibits, of course, robbery, burglary, theft, fraud, bribery, obstructing government operations, abuse of office. We also, and that's pretty much generic, don't steal, don't lie, don't bribe. We also expect our meetings or government operations to be transparent. In other words, open to the public so that they can see what's going on and feel like their public officers are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So we have laws that deal with Open Meetings Act, where you have to post the agendas, have public meetings. We expect that most of our public documents to be public records. We have laws under Chapter 171 of the Local Government Code dealing with conflicts of interest. This is where we prohibit government leaders from doing really business with themselves. That's pretty much the generic view of it. We have, in terms of purchasing, for the most part, we expect people to go out for bids and have, so that the process of buying is public. We have provisions in our laws for whistleblowers. In other words, we're really trying to enforce the laws. If someone reports something, we don't want him to be punished or fired. And if an employer fires someone especially in the government session, and that's what this government code deals with, whistleblowers in the government arena, then that person can sue and ask for his job back and get back pay and damages. Under the Texas Deceptive Trade Practices Act, this is one of the major Texas laws that deal with the minimum standards we expect of businesses. In other words, you can't lie, you can't provide false warranties. And then you have the state licensing associations, in terms of whether it's doctors or lawyers, and they have their own principles or precepts. Now in Texas, we have the state Texas Ethics Commission, but for the most part, what they deal with is conflicts of interest, personal financial statements, lobbying, campaign contributions, things of that sort. Under federal law, you're dealing with the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, Dodd-Frank. We expect securities, prospectuses, things like that to be honest, to correctly report the accounting and the background of companies. Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, that's where you're not supposed to be bribing foreign officials. So you have the moral minimum, which pertains to what businesses are expected from the legislatures, Congress, ordinances from city councils. And then you have, in many respects, your own religious backgrounds, whether in this case, the Jewish religion, they have 613 commandments going all the way back. That in Leviticus, you're supposed to have just balances and just weights. You're not supposed to steal. You're supposed to pay people when you hire them the same night. It's like day laborers. When you get into religious aspects, of course, here's the Caritas in Veritate. It's a letter from Pope Benedict XVI, and he talks about the relations between business and religion and charity, and we're actually going in just a few minutes look at a more detailed letter, more fuller letter of that. Of course, Muslim law, they have, of course, their restrictions, and they're much more strict in terms of interest and usury. You have just different philosophies of ethics, whether it's Kant, whether it's Adam Smith. In terms of Kant, his philosophy that individuals should evaluate their actions in light of the consequences that would follow if everyone in society acted in the same way. It's more based on a fundamental nature of human beings. Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations, that this is more that sort of the invisible hand. By pursuing your own interest, you tend to promote your society. Utilitarianism, where an action is morally correct or right when among the people it affects, it produces the greatest amount of good for the greatest number. Of course, you have a concern about minorities with that philosophy. You got the principle of rights and the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And then you look at different political viewpoints of government and regulations and business ethics. I was looking at President Franklin Roosevelt, and you look at 15 Annals of America. It's an encyclopedia edition of letters that people wrote. And here he's talking about his views of government, that government owes, that we owe to everyone an avenue to possess of himself of a portion of that plenty. Everybody sort of a ability to prosper, to obtain their means. And then you get into, of course, the different political platforms. The Republican Party, where they are the party of the maximum economic freedom. Prosperity is the product of self-discipline, work, savings, investment by individual Americans. Restore the proven values of the American free enterprise system. More self-reliance. They offer the Republican vision of free people using their God-given talents. Self-reliance. Then, of course, you look at the Democrat platform. Job creation, well, here it is, the Democrat platform, moving America forward. Everyone should play by the same rules. And they comment that banks on Wall Street play by different rules than businesses on Main Street and community banks. Without strong enough regulations, families were enticed and sometimes tricked into buying homes they couldn't afford. Banks and investors were allowed to package and sell risky mortgages. Huge reckless bets were made with other people's money on the line. That behavior not only nearly destroyed the financial system, it cost our economy millions of jobs, hurt the middle class and poor families. They want to bring Wall Street reform. And then you look at your own ethics in terms of business. Of course, you're going to have to abide by the laws of the legislature, of Congress, of the Texas legislature, of city ordinances. And then you're going to look at your own religious aspects and what you want internally. But when you're involving your business decision, you need to look at your reputation. Is the actions you're considering legal? Are you following the internal rules and procedures laid out by your company? Do the internal company's policies reinforce society's values? If you feel guilty, let your conscience be your guide. Every business organization is based on trust. To give an example of this, I negotiated thousands of agreements when I was the city of Port Arthur, their city attorney. And trust went a long way, especially when I negotiated the industrial district agreements with the local refineries. There was a sense of trust between the cities and the company's negotiators. And I find this true. When you say something, your word should be gold. And in terms of when you're negotiating, especially when negotiating with people that you're going to know for years and years, for contracts that may last 10, 15 years, you need to, when you say things, you need to have credibility. And you need to abide by ethics. And you need to think, well, how would your role models act? Now you got political hot issues out there that have ethical overtones. Of course you don't want to discriminate, and then there's the issue of reverse discrimination. You have issues of insider information, people taking advantage of inside information to trade. What's the difference between bribery and gifts and just marketing? And in terms of who enforces these laws, you have the Texas Ethics Commission, but they mostly monitor campaign contributions, expenditures, and they can issue civil fines. You get the Texas Attorney General, but they pretty much give a lot of advisory opinions. They do videos in the Open Meetings Act, Public Information Act. They have publications on conflicts, ethics, traps for the unwary. Of course, you have the district and county attorney that enforces the penal code. You got city attorneys that enforce ordinances and the codes of ethics in municipal court. You have the U.S. attorney that enforces federal laws. And these federal laws, of course, are quite numerous, whether the EEOC laws, FMLA, Pregnancy Discrimination Act. You have, of course, state and federal agencies. Texas Workforce Commission enforces labor laws. And then you get down to try to keep the basics. Don't lie. Don't exaggerate the quality of your goods or services. Be honest as to your quality, delivery dates, warranties, and payment policies. Be clear on your contracts. You need to think not only about this contract, but future contracts. And you're trying to create a trusting and future relationship with your clients. Don't steal. Don't steal other person's inventions or marketing. Treat others as you would want to be treated. Be fair. Contracts are a blueprint for success. Don't take advantage of people, as they will not do business with you again. Abide by the law and the spirit of the law. When you're looking at the laws of the state of Texas, one of the laws is the Co-Construction Act, Section 311.021, is that when they interpret the laws, they want to look at the just and reasonable result is intended. And this is just some various scenarios you want to think about. If you're a landman, you find a great lease. Do you contract it in your name instead of the company that hired you? I would think that you found the opportunity and you should give it to the company that hired you. A director of a company hears about a great business and buys it in his name instead of his corporation. Basically what the director did was take an opportunity away from his corporation. An attorney negotiates a lease with a landowner and does not give him the same terms as you would give with a landowner who has an attorney. In other words, you just need to be fair in what you do. In other words, you look at, would you give them the same conditions as to drilling locations, access, royalties? A secretary of a corporation hears about a disaster in her company and sells her shares before the disaster is published on the news. Is that really fair to the public? These are just some of the scenarios you need to think about. Now we're going to look at some other documents. This is from the Vatican. This is the letter Caritas in Veritate. It was issued by Pope Benedict XVI. And it really talks about Christianity and business and just the Pope's views on it. And as you go through here, Chris talks about Christianity, charity, and then it's one of poverty. Chapter 3, Fraternity, Economic Development, and Civil Society. Talks about charity and truth. In a climate of mutual trust, the market is the economic institution that permits encounters between persons, inasmuch as they are economic subjects who make use of contracts to regulate their relations as they exchange goods and services of equivalent value between them in order to satisfy their needs and desires. And then they're talking about the desire for the importance of distributive justice and social justice for the market economy. And then they talk about the development of poor countries. Economic activity cannot solve all social problems through the simple application of commercial logic. This needs to be directed toward the pursuit of the common good, for which the political community in particular must also take responsibility. Therefore, it must be borne in mind that grave imbalances are produced when economic action, conceived merely as an engine for wealth creation, is detached from political action conceived as a means for pursuing justice through redistribution. Today's international economic scene, marked by grave deviations and failures, require a profoundly new way of understanding business enterprise. So, again, of course, this is the Pope giving his views to Catholics throughout the world of how he wants them to act in their business relations. Now, this is from the University of Texas School of Law, and they go over the Texas Constitution, just give you other views of, how people look at religion and whatnot, and just through the history. And I think one of the rather amusing things is when you look at the original Constitution of the Republic of Texas, they had sort of a different view of religion and ministers. Article 5 thereof said, "Ministers of the gospel, being by their profession dedicated to God and the care of souls, ought not to be diverted from the great duties of their functions. Therefore, no minister of the gospel or priest of any denomination whatever shall be eligible to the office of the executive of the Republic, nor to a seat of either branch of the Congress of the same." Just sort of a different view of religion and government. And that was the 1836 Constitution of the Republic of Texas. Now this is a website or a website basically from the Royal Embassy of Saudi Arabia. Just give you an idea of how other governments view ethics, morals. In their case, they're very religious. Of course, they have this is about Saudi Arabia, what their laws are. They have a kingdom. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is a sovereign Arab Islamic state. Its religion is Islam. Its constitution is Almighty's God book, the Holy Quran, and the Sunnah traditions of the Prophet. Arabic is the language of the kingdom. So basically, in terms of their country, it's the Quran and the Sunnah and the traditions thereof. So they're a much more religious-based country in terms of the ties between their religion and their government. They specifically state that they're an Islamic government, and they're saying that the laws are basically the Quran and the traditions thereof. Here's the website of the Texas Ethics Commission. Again, here what you see is, for the most part, they're administering laws of the election code, political contributions. That's right here. Personal financial statements, conflicts of interest. And you go over here if you want to find, I guess, people or public officers that got in trouble. All you have to do is go to their enforcement sworn orders, sworn complaint orders. And in this case, it was Abaco Contracting Inc. who got in trouble. So this was sworn complaint. This actually involved a corporation, alleged that the respondent, in this case corporation, made an illegal campaign contribution. At this time, you could make contributions with corporate funds. And they issue a sanction of a $250 civil penalty. All this is public record. Also, the Texas Ethics Commission also delineates rules and regulations for lobbyists. So when you're in business, you really need to think about ethics. Ethics, you got the moral minimum, which is the laws, ordinances, and Texas, statutory laws, federal laws. You got your own religious space. You have your own just views. But the best thing you can do as a business person is keep it simple. Don't lie. When you say you're going to do something, do it. And in the end, you'll be better off.